As the opening credits roll, we hear the sound of a VHS tape being inserted into a VCR player. We don't know it just yet, but this sound is actually adult Sophie playing a tape from the holiday she spent with her father a couple of decades ago. We are then introduced to Calum from the perspective of the younger Sophie, who holds the camcorder. Through a glitchy segue where we catch our first glimpse of adult Sophie in the TV screen's reflection, we are plunged into a disorientating rave scene for the first time. Unlike later scenes from the dance floor, it doesn't look like Calum is actually present here. Instead, the few flashes of light focus mainly on Sophie, who seems to be deep in thought. It is as if she is trying to conjure an image of her father and is using the tape as a madeleine to transport her back to a time when they were together. Sure enough, after a montage of some more VHS footage as well as some strobe cuts to and from Sophie's face, she opens her eyes and we end up in what feels like a new film. Far from the fuzzy, desaturated VHS footage and abstracted dance sequences, we now start to view a regular, linear story told in a familiar format. In just over 3 minutes, the film has given us a major clue to what this mysterious rave scene means. The connection between the VHS tape and the strobe scenes suggests that Sophie's memories are incomplete and unreliable. To fill in the gaps that are represented by the darkness that intersperses the sporadic light, she must rely on other fragments to build a full picture of her late father. I would argue that there are 3 key fragments that serve this purpose. The first fragment is Sophie's own memory, or in her words, the mind camera.
I'll just record it in my little mind camera.
Memories are of course unreliable, which leads Sophie to lean on other sources of information to fill the gaps. The second fragment is the VHS tape that captures subtle moments of subtext that may have been lost on young Sophie, but can now be fully understood using the benefit of hindsight and her adult sensibilities. The final fragment is Sophie's imagination. Using the clues from her memories as well as the VHS tape, Sophie is able to build a picture of what Calum might have been doing, thinking and feeling whilst she was elsewhere. For example, during the night they were separated, Sophie cannot possibly have known everything that Calum did before he passed out in her bed. She can, however, infer that he behaved irresponsibly based on his sincere apology the following day, despite Sophie originally thinking nothing of it.
I'm so sorry, Sophie. Yesterday was...
Thing. It's no big deal.
No, it is a big deal.
Therefore, we can think of the moments that Calum spends apart from Sophie as taking place in her imagination. Together, Sophie's memories, VHS footage and imagination complete a picture of a whimsical father-daughter holiday to Turkey somewhere in the not-too-distant past. At this point, you might ask a simple question. Why? Why is adult Sophie going to such lengths to piece together the fragments from her past? This is especially puzzling given that there are important things for her to attend to in the present, namely her baby, her partner, and her own birthday. Yet it's clear that it's not just any old birthday. Although it's not explicitly said, it seems likely, given adult Sophie's circumstances, that she is turning the exact same age as her father did all those years ago. Her birthday therefore provides a direct connection to her memories of a significant holiday with her father, and by extension, her grief for his loss. One of the key behaviours associated with grief is searching, the act of seeking out anything that might repair a physical attachment to a loved one. A person suffering from this form of intense grief will do everything they can to dig up sounds, sights, smells, and people that remind them and bring them closer to who they lost. They might start to see apparitions in the spaces they used to inhabit, wearing the clothes and perfumes they used to wear. Sometimes the afflicted might even get so close that they feel as if they've crossed the void, that they have truly conjured their missing loved one into being. Sophie is spending her birthday doing just this. She is watching an old VHS tape of her cherished holiday to Turkey with her father next to the beloved carpet that he bought there. Combined with her memories and imagination, these totems seem to resurrect a near-perfect image of her father. However, rather than filling Sophie with happy memories, the picture that is presented to us is much more ambivalent. Sure, there are many moments of blissful happiness, but there are also signs that Calum wasn't as happy as Sophie once thought. The different fragments come together to illustrate this point. When we first see the tape of Sophie recording her father, Calum is joyful. He dances and jokes with his daughter whilst performing for the camera. The tape cuts and we think no more of it. Yet when the same clip resurfaces later in the film, we see things weren't quite as happy as they first seemed. Calum's tone shifts as soon as Sophie says she wants to do an interview. He insists with an eerie heavy-handedness that she stops recording.
Go on, Soph, turn it off now, okay?
Okay, it's off.
I can see a red light.
This is the extent of Calum's appearance on the VHS tape, and we are left with a number of questions. Why would a father be so defensive about their own daughter filming them? Does he have stage fright? Is he insecure about his looks? Or is there something he's trying to hide? To answer these questions, we are forced to move from the fragment of the VHS tape to the fragment of Sophie's memory. Here, Calum begins to open up a bit more.
When I was 11, nobody remembered it was my birthday. And when I told my mum, she was so angry, she grabbed me by the ear, made my dad drive me to the toy shop and made me pick something to buy.
From here, the conversation doesn't really delve further into his problematic childhood, other than Sophie simply registering that
That's a bit deep.
Of course, at the time, she likely had little understanding of this episode's true implications. With adult sensibilities, however, we can infer much more from this short interaction. For example, we might link it to Calum's feeling that he never really belonged to the city he grew up in, and start to build a picture of the neglectful, isolated childhood that he suffered, a childhood that may be the root cause of Calum's depression. So why would Calum happily reveal this intimate detail to Sophie's mind camera if he was so defensive about revealing it to an actual camera? Well, as we've established, memory is unreliable. Calum may have hoped that a young Sophie might not remember this small detail about her father's childhood. If it was caught on camera, however, this story would be there for posterity, where an older viewer would almost certainly understand the broader implications of his story. This brings me to the tragic conflict at the heart of Aftersun. The constant battle between Sophie's desire to remember who her father really was and her father's attempt to curate her memories into a purely positive image of their time together. Calum is desperate for his daughter to not find out about his depression and goes to great lengths to obscure his suffering. Even when Sophie manages to relate to his feelings, Calum does his best to ignore her words, suck up his pain, and carry on making happy memories.
Don't you ever feel like you've just done a whole amazing day and then you come home and feel tired and down and feels like your bones don't work, they're just tired and everything is tired, like you're sinking. I don't know, it's weird.
We're here to have a good time, eh?
At first, it seems as if Calum's strategy works on Sophie. Whilst she does understand that there are certain problems in Calum's life, like his uncaring parents, his disassociation from his home city, and his financial difficulties, she doesn't seem to join the dots and grasp the true gravity of Calum's failing mental health. Instead, she believes that both her and her father are in the same blissful frame of mind, that they are under the same sky.
I think about the fact that we can both see the sun, so even though we're not actually in the same place and we're not actually together, we're both underneath the same sky, so kind of together.
Of course, this couldn't be further from the truth, but it is exactly what Calum wants Sophie to remember. Nowhere is this deception more clear than in this scene. The warm amber glow of the bedroom contrasts with the cold harshness of the bathroom, revealing the extent of Calum's isolation and suffering. Here, Sophie's memories are physically separated from what's happening on the other side of the wall, suggesting that she's using her imagination to fill in the gaps. Such glimpses into the dark show that Sophie is nearing a more complete understanding of her father, as well as the demons that plagued him. Whilst Calum is clearly doing everything he can to mask his internal turmoil, there are times when he simply cannot hide his anguish any longer. Nowhere is this more clear than in the karaoke scene.
You didn't sign us up.
Of course I did. I've done it every holiday since I was like 5.
Yeah, well, maybe you're a little old for it now, Soph.
What are you talking about, Dad? Those girls were like 50.
Okay, let it go, okay? You'll move on in a second. I'm not up for it, okay?
From this small interaction, we can see that this holiday is not like the others, that something has changed in Calum. He can no longer pretend to be the positive, fun-loving dad that he so desperately wants to be. It is not that Sophie is too old or that Calum is embarrassed, but that he simply doesn't have the energy to wear his mask in front of all those people. Wearing it in front of Sophie is tiring enough. When he is finally alone, as imagined by adult Sophie, we can finally see Calum for who he really is, and understand how he truly feels. A man that is broken by depression. These competing interpretations of Calum come crashing together in the film's final dance sequence. An ecstatic Calum rushes to the dance floor with his daughter. The two share a joyous dance while Sophie looks adoringly at her father. This is what Calum wants to be remembered for, and Sophie embraces him as tightly as she can, trying to savour the pure happiness of the moment. Meanwhile, as the symbolic rave mirrors this action, adult Sophie juxtaposes her younger self with intense expressions of anger. She is coming to terms with how her father really felt, and tries to grab hold of him just as she did all those years ago, only to be pushed away whilst Calum falls into the darkness. The words of Queen and David Bowie undercut the moment. This is our last dance. At the end of the holiday, Sophie runs out of VHS tape and the manifestation of Calum that Sophie has created begins to fade away. He moves from the imaginary world she's created back into the ambiguity of her memories. Sophie is forced to go through the feeling that she's lost her father all over again, realising that no sight, smell, sound, dream, or VHS tape can ever truly bring him back. Without doubt, the experience of reliving her past, only to find that her father was in far more pain than she ever realised as a child, is incredibly difficult. Nonetheless, it is also an important moment of catharsis for Sophie. Now that she knows the full story, she can finally start to accept her loss. Thanks for watching. I'm Jake Bishop and this is Socio Cinema, the channel where we read behind the lines of the screenplay and put films into context. If this sounds like something you're interested in, then please do like, subscribe and follow me on social media.